Hello, welcome pen friends. I wanted to talk about pen buying. It's a subject that is always on my mind, and it's just not realistic to think that I'll never buy another pen, but I am trying to have the goal in mind always of making sure I'm going to be really happy with the pens that I do get and that I use them heavily. I don't want to just I would use the word collect, but I don't want to just gather. And that's something that I did in the past. You know, the first couple of years back into the hobby, I would love a pen model and then I would get so many of them. And that didn't really work for me because space-wise and the idea that I can only write with so many at a time. So earlier this week, I was listening to a marketing type video. I don't know how it came up in my YouTube feed, but the person was saying that people buy from the heart and then they justify with their mind. And so it got me really thinking, because I was already organizing to do this video. In fact, it's been tough to figure out how to approach it. So this is just going to be a chatty video. I can't make it concise. I'm not here to tell you what to do because I don't know what to do yet, but I do know that I'm doing a little better. Like I bypassed one pen where, you know, my heart really wants the pen, and it's still, every time I see it, and in fact it's still available, which I'm surprised. And we'll talk specifics toward the end, but I wanted to just kind of get it out there generally, that I feel proud about bypassing that pen because I know it doesn't fit into my real criteria, and it wouldn't be a daily writer for me. It just is sort of like a beautiful pen, but yeah, and by one of my favorite makers. So that makes it harder in terms of the temptation's there, but in my mind I do know that it wouldn't be what I would write with the most. So the one that the new pen release that came out today, this is July 23rd, 2021, I did order. And it's funny because my heart wasn't as drawn to that pen, but my mind was. So it really has rearranged my furniture just to think about that one thing. That his whole premise in doing that video was simply to tell you how people market to you, to tell you that, you know, I don't know, there was like 3 things. I don't know if I made it all the way through the video or not, because I sort of accidentally ended up in there. But that one thing to think about was, it's very true that both our heart and our mind can tempt us on different things. So those of you who followed me for a long time know that I kind of have like 5 criteria that I look at, but I don't always stick to it 100% for every single pen that I might get. But I really want the pen to be affordable, and that varies. That changes according to what's happening and how much money that I have to spend on pens, quite frankly. I want it to be available. It's very frustrating to me whenever it's, you know, so limited that it's snatched up within 2 days. That's really upsetting. I want definitely I want the nib and the writing experience to be smooth, or otherwise it doesn't matter how pretty the pen is, it won't get used. I prefer a swappable nib situation where I'm not worried about breaking a feed, but that's one that I break the most often. And then I just love a good demonstrator. So that's one of the ways, and everybody's going to be different. You're not going to have the same list as me. You'll have your own specific list, and it may or may not help you, because when the heart is involved, it really does kind of draw us to things, you know, for different reasons. So one of the other things that I like is if I can see a review on the pen before I purchase it, which puts me in kind of a weird, awkward seat, because I think one of the only pens where I did not wait was the Moonman Q1, I think it is. That little squatty fat pen with the, you know, this ridiculous proportions, but I just had to have one. But I would generally wait to see a review, especially from Chris Rapp 52. But I just rolled the dice, purchased that, and ended up out with one of the first, maybe there were a handful of us reviewing them at the same time. So that was kind of fun. So I'm a weirdo because I sometimes review pens, and I have the YouTube channel. So that puts a whole nother wrench in the tire, in the system. But I do like to look at what I have, what I use heavily, and it's really cool because one of the examples I found of where if I was buying from the heart, then I'd be buying if I stuck with that, like the look of this pen and the draw that it has, the Diamond 580. But for me personally, I don't ink these up as often. I do love it. I really do. But it's the Eco that I write with heavily in my journals. I just, I may not like the looks of this as much as I like the looks of the Diamond 580, but I have 3 of these. One was a gift and the 2 that I purchased.
11 a.m.
Oh my, it's early for me to be making a video. So that was where I thought, well, yeah, that's interesting. But I figured that out rather early on. I don't hate this pen. I love these pens. But for me to write and write and write and write, which is what I do a lot, then it's the Eco, definitely, for me. And so I now have many more of those. And I love the colors. I love being able to match up colors with the Ecos. So the other thing is that I, along the way, discovered that some of these TWSBI Ecos are more neutral and I could put any ink in them and I don't feel quite so compelled to buy every color. So I've got the clear one and then the rose gold black demonstrator. And that was a game changer for quite a while. But then I noticed myself drawn to getting a green one. Well, I haven't done that yet. In fact, this morning, that was another one of the things that went through my mind before I pre-ordered the pen that I pre-ordered. I might as well just say, the TWSBI Swipe, which is a total game changer, but it doesn't draw my heart as much as it does my mind because it kind of falls more into how I felt before I ordered the TWSBI Go. It was different, unique, and I wanted to try it, and I wasn't sure how I'd like the grip and how I'd get along with the filling system. But in the case of the new TWSBI Swipe, the filling system is a cartridge or cartridge converter, so, and they even have 2 different types. So that I said, yes to that. It fit in my pen budget because it's not always about that. Sometimes I have more money to spend, but this time it was really important that it did fit into the affordability and the budget that I have in mind. So the pen that I've resisted, that I've continued to resist, and it hasn't been all that hard, it's gotten a little bit easier as time's gone on, is the beautiful TWSBI Draco. It's gorgeous, and it catches my eye every single time I see it in a, even just the thumbnail for somebody's review or passing by on Instagram. And I've investigated it thoroughly, but I know for myself that I don't ink up my piston fillers that are not demonstrators very often. I want to love them, but I just don't. I don't. I want to see the ink. And I guess I don't know, looking at these, like, I just want that shiny, colorful, I just want different. Now, the finish on the Draco is gorgeous, but thank goodness it is very expensive. It's $150, so that's a major speed bump right there for me. When it first came out, I kind of I told myself, you can get it, because at that time I could have, but I made a different choice. Actually, it kind of came down between getting another one of the Opus 88, the special edition. So that is another speed bump that I sort of have, is what else could I purchase with the same pen money? And I can remember over the last 5 years that there were times when it wasn't even a pen-related thing that was really on my mind that I wanted. So I can remember one month where it was clothing. It was some clothing item, which I hate to buy. I hate buying clothes. I don't have a very good track record with choosing the right clothes. But I've got a lot better track record now of pens, buying pens that I'll use. and have been blessed with many pens that I didn't purchase that I got to try, which then led me to understand, wow, I really like this. How did they know I would like it? But people do. People are just amazingly generous and also seem to know me better than I know myself. So this is what I was afraid of, that this would turn into a ramble without, like, 5 tips or, very specific. But I still think there's value in the conversation, because I want to know, how you go about thinking about purchases. Because especially when we're in a position where it's not a no buy, because we know when when we just can't purchase. We know that. And we also know when we could, when we have the funds and we got all our bases covered really well, and we could spend on the hobby. So there's those two drastic sides. But then most of the time, if it's like all or nothing, we're in the middle somewhere. Somewhere on that scale in the middle. So that's where I'm looking at. I realize that it's obvious sometimes. Like if we're doing some major home improvement, or we've lost a job, or we're not, in that position for whatever reason, or another goal has taken priority. Certainly, I don't know very many people in this hobby that don't already have enough pens. And hopefully I'm not offending anyone, but really seriously, it seems to be quite common to end up with plenty of pens to write with. And in fact, I have been moving from having way too much stuff in general, and many other categories as well, toward I almost don't want to use the word minimalism, because everybody that knows me would just laugh to have me say I'm moving toward minimalism. Even my mom was like, that was kind of funny to her. But it isn't. It is truly a movement toward that, and it's going to look different for everybody. And it's like everything is relative. At one time, I know I had 1,000 books, and then I know at another time I got it narrowed down to 400. I love books. It's a huge part of my life, and the keeper books and the reference books and the whole 9 yards. But back when I was studying to be a licensed Unity teacher, I had way more books, and it took me a long time to let go of those. That was a heart thing, where I knew that I was ready to let go of most of them, and I had like maybe 4 that I wanted to keep. But it took a while. But then I kept telling myself how blessed someone else was going to feel with those reference books that I was no longer using, and I took them to Half Price Bookstore and made a little money and sold them. So that's way off the beaten trail there. I have all these notes, but I had organized several different times, and it just didn't feel right. I really felt like it needed to be a face-to-face ramble rather than, I have my pen case. This was another sort of I don't know if I could call it a speed bump, but I have a 24 pen case that I'm using exclusively for my TWSBIs, and I've told myself that's it. Like when I get it filled up, it's going to be a 1 in, 1 out. Like if you want another one, Chris, then one has to go, which is not impossible, right? We're all connected in this hobby, and it could very well be. So, there's a lot of spots empty because I have so many of them inked up right now. But that's one of the things I've been working on for a bigger project, to really see each individual collection. Lamies, I think I had 5 in service, and then I think an individual had sent me 3, and I've passed on 1 to another person. And that was her intent, was for me to put it in the best use. They were pens she was no longer going to use. So, and then I have another one that's upcoming, going to be sent out. But it's so intriguing to me. I've watched videos on collecting versus accumulating, and on, am I done buying pens? I should be done buying pens. So many interesting, and I'll listen to anything anybody has to say on the subject. not because I just am desperate to change myself, but because I find it so curious how we behave in this hobby. You know, it's fun, it's expensive. I mean, you know, I can really laugh about it now, but when I first got back into fountain pens, when I was 16, I had one fountain pen, and I used it with different color cartridges, and I had a lot of frustrations, but when it was writing good, it was really it was great. But let's face it, I didn't know how to clean it, and I didn't have the patience, and there weren't videos, there wasn't YouTube, there wasn't internet, there wasn't anything. So, you know, I don't know how my mom dealt with hers, but I would imagine that she wrote so much with it that it just never, and I think she always wrote only with blue. So I just can't imagine her pen ever drying. But for me, being in high school, you know, we weren't allowed to write with pen in certain circumstances. It had to be a certain type. I remember that, because I remember I carried that pen even though I knew I wasn't really allowed to use it in school. And I can remember English class, and I remember, you know, putting it away really quick because I didn't want him to take it. But oh my gosh. And I don't honestly remember why or what. I don't remember having to write in pencil either, so who knows? Maybe it just smeared too much, or I'm not really sure why. But it's such a vast topic. You know, the idea that we know we're being marketed to, you know, and I sometimes compare it with Tupperware, where, you know, they come out with a different color every season, and who needs another set of measuring cups or another set of bowls? But wow, that it's like, okay, you know, it's the same thing, and yet it's not the same thing, especially because color really grabs our heart too, you know, and I find it very interesting. I really do. And let me just look at my notes, because I know there were things that I thought were really fun to talk about, but that's one of my biggest downfalls, is that I just would rather just ramble. Yeah, okay, people buy from the heart and justify it with their minds. Okay. And then I mean, you might say that not buying the TWSBI Draco was easy because of the price, but it still, in the beginning, there was a back and forth. But then one of my dearest pen friends showed the Draco on his video, and I thought, yes, that fits perfectly into his collection, whereas in my daily writers, it doesn't really make that much sense, other than the fact that it has the smooth TWSBI nib, which I have on many of mine that I know I'll ink up more. You know, and it was like, I'm so glad that I noticed that and realized, yes, you see how much sense that makes for him versus you. And then with the TWSBI Swipe, it's an unknown, you know, the nib is not unknown. I'm sure the writing experience is going to be great. But it's an unusual thought to be thinking about a TWSBI with a cartridge converter. I think it's great. I, you know, kind of wish it was a little more shiny. It kind of reminds me more of the, because I did order the smoke. So it reminded me of the look of, but not quite, you know, the TWSBI Go in smoke, you know, it kind of like, it doesn't look the same. It's got a clip. It's way different. And the price point is up around $7 higher than the TWSBI Go. So that's another, you know, little consideration, or big consideration, depending on which year, month, day, whatever that it is. Oh yeah, and I talked already a little bit about, ask yourself what else could you buy with the same money, or set aside, because I like to do sinking funds for various different things, like the pets and their needs, and also like a new climber for them and whatnot. And maintenance and fixing the house is just 24/7. I mean, that's never going to end till we croak, I guess. But these are all out of order. Look at your currently inked pens, and in general, try to imagine how much use you'll get out of a pen. Yeah, but like I said, I am not the expert. I'm the expert at overbuying pens, that's for sure. It's just gotten better each year, though. I've gotten more fine-tuned about what I like. I know not to buy exclusively broad nibs because I need the medium nibs in my journals. So actually I got the TWSBI Swipe in the smoke, or I guess that's what they were calling it. Anyway, it looks like the smoke, with a medium nib, because that pen is one that I'll be able to take everywhere. I'll probably be even more protective of my Ecos than I will be of that one. But it's such a big topic, and I need to stop talking now, even though I have more to say. It's not organized, so it's not quite, it's not quite where I want it to be, but I still think it's fun. And I really want to hear in the comments, and I really would love it if there were more videos out there of people talking about how they decide, how they decide how to spend their pen allowance or whatever you want to call it. Not so much how to restrict yourself, because I don't know that ever really works. It does when it needs to, when it's absolutely necessary, and when, we just know. And I've been waiting for that day to come where I know I have too many pens, but I'm working on that. And I definitely am working on that. And there are some that need to be tried out, reviewed, and rehomed and whatnot. And I just find that does take a lot of time. I'm responsible for most of what I have here, and then some have been I've been enabled or pen-abled or whatever you want to call it. So I promised myself right around 20 minutes, so I think I'm going to stop now and hope to hear from you. Comments, video responses. I'd love to hear, what your criteria is, if you have any, and how you go about your collection or accumulation or whatever you want to call it. I've always called things collections, even if I didn't keep them in the packaging. In fact, I can't keep anything in the packaging. I would make a poor true collector, because I can't keep a toy or a knife or a pen or anything in its original packaging, even though I grew up being taught that it has more value if you do that. But that's not who I am, especially not with pens, because I'm a writer, just a constant writer. Whether or not, the value of the writing, I think journaling is valuable no matter. We shouldn't judge that. So, okay, I'm going to leave now. Bye. Have a happy day. Let me know did you decide to try the TWSBI Swipe? I'd like to hear about that too. And if you haven't already subscribed, you might consider it, so that you can comment and be aware of the videos that I do put out. And I'll see you next time. Bye for now.